We are learning some new details now about what top officials at the Department of Veterans Affairs may have known about that agency's health care scandal. A judge's ruling this week revealing that senior bureaucrats in Washington were briefed about falsified wait lists and other problems at the VA hospital in Phoenix. And joining us now to discuss this, two former prosecutors, Jim Shalek and Peter Odom. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Let's talk about this. I'm so struck by how many scandals in recent years have been enlightening to us, not from congressional hearings, but from court cases.
Well, exactly. The civil case has opened the door, because of evidence that was revealed in that, of possible criminal conduct. And that may lead to charges against some of these high-up officials of perjury and lying to Congress. That often happens in a civil case. Documents, testimony reveal possible criminal conduct, and that may have happened here.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, I mean, let's address the white elephant in the room. That is that the victims here are veterans. These were our courageous men in uniform that were waiting for these appointments, in some cases dying while waiting for the VA to do what it was charged by Congress to do originally. This wasn't just manipulation of numbers. This was manipulation of people's lives, and it's really a tragedy.
At the time this was happening, the widely held narrative here was that Sharon Hellman, the director of the Phoenix VA, was the person who was largely responsible. But it came forth in testimony in this civil case that her predecessor knew about this and briefed her higher-ups in turn briefed her higher-ups about this phenomenon. I want you to take a look at this congressional testimony from the VA Secretary, Eric Shinseki, at the time this was all happening.
In your judgment, based on what you know, are people, quote unquote, cooking the books?
I'm not aware, and other than a number of isolated cases where there is evidence of that.
He knew more than that, but that's probably technically a true statement that he didn't think it was throughout his entire department because he didn't have his full finger on the pulse. It wasn't just him. It was so many corrupt bureaucrats across the VA who were more interested in preserving their jobs and preserving their bonuses than they are in getting things right. It's hard to change a bureaucracy. Secretary Shinseki found that out the hard way.
Jim, what did you think of Secretary Shinseki's testimony there?
Well, we have to give him credit at this time that it was truthful. However, they're not going to make a case, a prosecutor, if it's a he said, she said. To prove that these higher-ups knew, they're going to have emails, text messages, other witnesses to move forward. And that's what they're going to try and do, is build a case based upon corroborative evidence, not he said, she said. But following up on what was said before, this is a disgrace. And there may be more than just perjury and obstruction of justice charges. If people in the VA knew that a certain patient may have died or was in a life-threatening situation, and they delayed their appointment and didn't do anything, you may have reckless homicide charges or maybe even manslaughter. People's lives were at stake and people died. So this is really serious, and they've got to take a careful look at each patient as to whether or not their death was premature and caused by others.
Peter, should there be criminal charges?
Well, let me just address this. First of all, this was a systematic problem, okay? The fox was guarding the hen house at the Veterans Administration. People were given incentives to not only fabricate but lie about the numbers, because incentives were given out, performance reviews, bonuses, and promotions were given out based on these numbers. So this was systematic, it was systemic, and I believe that that's what the evidence is going to reveal.
Should we go back into this crisis now that there is a new secretary for the Veterans Administration who has promised to improve things? He seems to be certainly sincere, talking about Bob McDonald. Can he improve on this? Is he improving on it? And do you have expectations that things will improve?
Well, he's doing a good job, I mean, from what we see. But yes, you got to go back. Men and women lost their lives. This isn't about perjury and cover-ups and documents. People died, and we owe it to the families of these warriors to go back and prove, if we can, whether or not there was misconduct and caused their death.
Correct. Until we understand what was happening there and the corruption in the ranks and files at the Veterans Administration, we can't move forward. So we owe it to our brave men and women in uniform.
And there are civil cases pending right now from veterans who were mishandled.
And this information will help those cases and help those veterans that are suing get justice.
Jim Shalek, Peter Odom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good discussion.
Good to be here.